So when we had, the way he built the church architecturally, it was a big, like a fan, and inside the altars were like a big V, and they were about maybe 3 feet, 2.5 feet, 3 feet high, and you had a kneeling bench in front of them. You'd kneel, and then the altar workers would pray with you or whatever, during an altar call. And every night we'd give an altar call, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids would get saved. Well, we had cardboard boxes behind the kneeling bench, the altars. And we'd pull those boxes out, put them right behind the altar. Well, these kids would come down and get saved. They'd throw their drugs in these boxes. We had one young man, a lot of our kids, people hitchhiked in those days, and they'd pick up hitchhikers and bring them to church, and they'd get saved. And one young man threw a loaded revolver in the box. And when I saw that, I went over and we were ministering to him, and he was crying, gave his heart to Jesus. He said, I was on my way home to kill my parents. And he says, now Jesus, and he was just, so we discipled him and everything. We had the loaded gun. Well, what we would do, we'd get syringes, we'd get, everything, every pipes, everything. Well, at the end of the service, each night, each Friday, we'd put them in big plastic bags, tie them up, put them in the church safe, in the pastor's office. And the sheriff's department would come on Mondays and pick all that stuff up. Well, at first they thought we were giving the kids drugs, right? So they'd send narc agents in there disguised. Well, the kids really were. A lot of them got saved. But I've got pictures of those drugs one particular night, and they were everything, LSD, all this stuff. One kid threw a book that was filled with marijuana, waxed with marijuana. His brother was in Vietnam. He would buy the stuff, he'd put it in, wax it together, and the book was cut out inside the pages, about like that. And he'd lay that marijuana in there and wrap it many times with cellophane, and then he would send it by UPS or whatever. I don't know if it wasn't UPS, but and post office. And the brother would get it and go sell it and smoke it. And it was just, that was a real phenomenon. But honestly, there were so many things that went on. We had a lot of demonic opposition too. We had a lot of demon-possessed people come through. We saw a lot of deliverances. We had Church of Redeemer. I think they had the clinic. We sent a lot of kids that needed medical help over there. But the Children of God was a group of really bad people. It was a backslidden pastor and his family, and they had buses, and they'd go around and entice young men and women, and it was sexual enticement, and they also did drugs. And one of our guys got hooked with one of their young girls, and they had a compound somewhere, I forgot where it was, west of Houston. Well, we got wind of it. His parents came and begged us to help them. Said, they've got our son, we can't communicate, what's going on. So we did some surveillance, and we went in there actually and kidnapped him from the Children of God. Brought him back, detox, and actually there was a book written about it. Mm-hmm. But there was just stuff like that, how are you gonna say it? Because we weren't, it was just like, what's next, it was just presence of God. We tried to, made a lot of mistakes, but we tried to, be sensitive to what we were doing. On Friday nights, we'd have a witness time during the service where we'd allow people in the audience, parents, because one of our rules was if you get saved in our meeting, and wanted to go full time in our ministry, or if not even, you must call your parents, tell them who you are, what happened to you, and then do whatever they tell you to do. So we had parents flying in all over America. And they'd get up and weep and say, our son was in med school, he dropped out, we thought he was dead, we didn't know where he was, we haven't heard from him in 3 years or 2 years or whatever, and now he's born again, and we've talked to him and he wants to go back to med school. So we had hundreds and hundreds of those kind of testimonies of parents who, and we had some negative things. We had a young boy where his dad was needed help, legalist, mean, and he would come in. Well, one night he came in on a Friday night, and after service, it was just glorious. Well, I don't know whether he was drunk or what, but he was a very angry man. And he grabbed his son and was dragging him literally out of the auditorium. His son was about 15, maybe 16. And anyway, we stopped him, and we were going to try to, you know, stop the altercation and say, well, what can we do? Because the son had gotten saved, he was a great kid. And the dad was cursing and all that kind of. Well, the boy, he said, I'm taking him back, and legally you can't do anything. He was threatening us, so we knew we had to back off. Well, the kid ran out the door and gone, and disappeared. And Dad, you know, was really concerned, you know, for weeks and weeks and weeks. Well, the boy had run out of the Heights, you know, down the street, 11th Street, ran over to the you know, the loop, hitchhiked. Somebody picked him up. Never heard from him for a couple of years. And the guy that picked him up was the guy that had murdered. They found a storage building with about 17 bodies in it. Henley. And he was one of the, he killed him. So that was unfortunate. But you know, we had a Youthquake reunion recently here, and professionals.
What was it like?
Oh man, it was like deja vu. I mean, it was somebody got the idea and called us, what do you think? And so I said, well, y'all handle it if you want. You know, I didn't expect anything to happen. They had a website called Youthquake Houston, you know, and they put the word out, and we had it in this building, and it was packed. And it was marvelous because a lot of our singing groups, like one called Bob, Frank, and Mark, they were exceptionally good. They came back, and it was just like they were, you know, they're older guys now, but it was like they never stopped. They just picked up right where they were, sang their old songs. It was so incredible. And people gave testimonies. It was a 3-day thing. We had meals catered here, and we talked to people. That one guy from up in the east of here, northeast, has a water wheel service, and just a lovely guy. And he and his brother, you know, they were both converted and saved, and he's got a very successful business, you know, flies a plane and all that kind of stuff. Just a neat guy. And
when they came, were they what you expected they'd be like, or what did you feel like?
Well, of course, I think I really recognized all of them. I think. Yeah. I don't. Maybe there's one or two. I forgot the names, but it was like you know, it was like we just all. There was kind of a parentheses, and now we're back together. Yeah. And it was just it was so easy. There was no. It just flowed. The singing and the testimonies and the sharing, and it was quite heartwarming for me. And we got emails all over the United. Well, actually all around the world. Said, "Oh, I'd love to be there, but I can't." You know, there were hundreds of emails we got.